Councillor Norton, and Councillor Armstrong. Okay, thank you. And so, Deputy Mayor, the first item on the agenda would be approval of minutes, item 2.1, and that is for the minutes of August the 31st.
So do I have a moved by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next item.
Next item is the approval of the agenda, and there are three additions from Committee of the Whole. Item 17.1 would be a report respecting the Chief City Engineer. 17.2 would be a report respecting engineering services for Fundy Key. And 17.3 would be recommended appointments to city boards and agencies.
Okay, do I have someone move the agenda as amended? Councillor Merrithew and seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk.
Next item, Deputy Mayor, is disclosures of conflict of interest.
Okay, is there any conflict? I do want to say to any member of council that the issue on the water issue from the west side, there's no conflict on that tonight by any member of council. Unless they want to declare, but they don't have to, nor does our city solicitor. Okay, on that, going ahead, it's number, Common Clerk.
Next item, Your Worship, is item 5 on the agenda, the consent agenda.
Okay, that's 5.1 to 5.11.
Deputy, I'll move 5.1 through 5.11 inclusive.
Moved by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor, who's got their hand up? Councillor Merrithew. On that question, all those, Councillor Casey, did you have a question? Yes, can you put your mic on or unmute yourself?
Yeah.
I can't do it, I guess, so I don't know how to do it anyway, so you have to do it.
Yeah, it's just a different setup this time. I was pushing the wrong button.
Okay, what's your question?
Just on 5.3, just a clarification. This basically has to go through our legislation and whatnot. Is that?
Well, the recommendation is to go ahead with their demolition, yes.
Because the RFP is done, and
Yes,
usually it has to go through.
yes.
So we can't say. It's very hard to say no at this point. If I'm not
It's a
mistaken.
recommendation of our staff to go forward.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. So on the question, the consent agenda, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, our next item is members' comments. I should let you say that, Jonathan, Common Clerk.
That's okay, Deputy Mayor. Yes, it's item 6.
Okay, I have 2 or 3 items that I'd like to just mention because they're items that on behalf of all members of council. We've had some sad news in the last few days on the passing of Kenneth Gould. Kenneth Gould was an educator for 30 years in St. John, and 26 years of that 30, he was a principal of a school. I don't know which one, but several, perhaps more than one school in St. John. He also served on many boards and committees through the education system in our city. And he served the citizens of St. John as a member of Common Council. He was a former member of council for 12 years, from 1978 to 1989. And when he was councillor, he served on many boards and commissions. He also was a very supportive member of the Shriners, and he was particularly interested in the children and their families at the Shriners Hospital for Children in Montreal. He did a wonderful job there. He was very active. And he was one of the top individuals for blood donors in the province of New Brunswick. He donated 909 times. And his family are hoping that there's 91 people that will go and donate blood in the next short time so that he will have his 1,000th donation. He was also involved in sports of many kinds, and he was a very active individual in the city of St. John and did many things. And it's of a special mention tonight because he was a wonderful family man, and he also was the stepdad of our mayor, Don Darling. So it's kind of close to all of us. Not only was he a former council member, but his family was very much very close to our mayor. So we certainly extend our feelings and our condolences to the family and hope that all is doing well tonight. We also have another passing of a great person in the city of St. John. I mean, everybody is a wonderful citizen, but sometimes it's just important enough to mention it at council, and because sometimes people play a very active role in the city and they deserve to be mentioned. So Bill Gale, he was a Newfoundlander, but he became a St. Johner many years ago, and he was a regional vice president of the Royal Bank for the province of New Brunswick and PEI. And he had 39 years of service with the bank. And after he did finish his work at the bank, he worked in financial consulting, and he also worked in real estate. But not only that, he established a very important organization in the city of St. John, and he established the Business Community Anti-Poverty Initiative. And for 20 years, that organization has helped to change the lives of so many in this city and has helped to end poverty in our city. And many other citizens have joined Bill in doing that. And he was a very proud and committed member, and he got so many people involved with him. You know, he was a very active member in our community. He was the chairman or the past president of the St. John United Way. He was on the Parkinson's Society, the Board of Governors, and the past president of the Rotary Club of St. John. He was a great salesman and promoter, so he sold many tickets and raised an awful lot of money for various organizations in our city. He was the recipient of the Order of New Brunswick, the YMCA, YWCA Red Triangle Award, and the Rotary Paul Harris Fellow Award. He was a wonderful community supporter and did so much. And there's so many people, I'm sure, in this city that mourn the passing of Bill Gale because he was so involved and he was such a highly committed community person in our city and helped so many. So we certainly extend our condolences and our feelings to Bill Gale's family and to thank for all his contributions that he gave throughout the city of St. John. And that was his funeral was earlier today. Also, the funeral of Kenny Gould was earlier today. So I have a couple other announcements that I do want to make that is on behalf of council. Tonight is really a very special council meeting in a way because a few months ago, council decided that we had to reduce our staff, and you know, there's many of our employees in many different roles that have taken early retirement, and I think we should say thank you to all of them. And some have already left the city, and some are leaving by this Wednesday, September 30th. And every one of them has done a wonderful job for the city of St. John, and we do want to pay a special thank you to all of them and to wish them every success for their future. But there's one person that's retiring, and this will be his last council meeting tonight. He's here somewhere, but you know, like all of us, we're all spread out in different places, so we can't see anyone really in person tonight. But John Nugent has worked 45 years he's given service to the citizens of St. John. He's been in our legal department through various roles. He started in 1975 as an articling law clerk. He's worked in various roles, as I have just said, and he was appointed as a city solicitor in 1996. And I can tell you that not only this council, us here tonight, but every council before us has had the support and the advice from John Nugent. And he's always given of his time. You know, John has always been here at council. He's spent a lot of his weekends. I can remember that he'd be here every Sunday afternoon working in his office, and he's really put a lot into his career, and he's just done a wonderful job for the city of St. John and for everybody in this city, not just our citizens, but our senior staff and all the elected people. Because you could go to John Nugent with any question on the history of this city or the traditions that we've had throughout the last number of years, many, many years in the city, and John would know something about it. And if he didn't know anything about it, which would be highly unusual, he'd go and research it. So when he called you back, he'd have all the information. And he was just a very dedicated, wonderful employee. He was always there for everyone. And he received the Queen's Counsel of New Brunswick in 2019. And that's the highest honor that you can receive in the legal profession in this province. So on behalf of council, and I don't know where we're going to find him, but we'll probably try to find him after tonight's meeting. I just want to show everyone this certificate because this is from council. It has all council names on it. And we're going to present this to John from all of us to say thank you for a wonderful job, for a wonderful career with the city of St. John. And I'll just read it. It's just something that John can have and to put up on his wall. It says, congratulations and best wishes are extended to John Nugent on his retirement from the city of St. John after 45 years of dedicated and loyal legal service to our city. Mr. Nugent began his career in 1975 and after many roles within the city's legal department, became city solicitor in 1996. Mr. Nugent obtained Queen's Counsel of New Brunswick in 2019. Mr. Nugent has been a constant source of support to all elected members and staff throughout his career. We thank you so much for your service, and we wish you much success and happiness in all your future years. And we've listed all the names on there with Mayor Don Darling and all of us here on council. So John can have this as a souvenir from all of us, and we certainly wish him every success. He will have 2 more days. He won't be leaving until Wednesday, but this will be the last meeting that we'll share with him. So we wanted John to have that and to say thank you so much to John for this evening. We could probably clap, you know, even though we're not together. He could still hear us. So, and I just want to say one other thing because of I want to recognize Melanie Tompkins. She will be coming John's replacement. Her new title will be Senior Legal Counsel. Next council meeting, she will be sitting in where we normally have the city solicitor sit. So we welcome her aboard. Of course, she's worked with us for some time, and we look forward to working with her. And my final wish on behalf of council, I think it's very appropriate for us as the city council of the city of St. John to extend congratulations and best wishes to Premier-elect Blaine Higgs, who won the election. Last meeting, or was September the 14th, we didn't have a council meeting because of the election, and Premier Higgs won a majority, so we want to congratulate him. He's not from St. John, but he's very close to us, so we're his closest city. So we congratulate him and wish him all the best for the next 4 years. And also want to extend congratulations and to all the MLAs, and hopefully we'll be working with them. I will mention the MLAs from the immediate area here in the city, Trevor Holder, Arlene Dunn from St. John South, and Dorothy Shepherd from the west, and Glenn Savoy from the east. Congratulations to all of them. We look forward as a council to working with them for the next 4 years, and hope that we'll be able to accomplish many, many things during that time. And we look forward to seeing them soon. And I know that this week, I think they plan to announce their cabinet. So I'm sure that all of them are busy doing that now. So anyway, I just wanted to, those are the announcements that are really on behalf of everybody on this council. So I just wanted to mention that, and thank you for that. And is there any other member of council that wishes to have some remarks? Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Deputy. First, I guess, to everybody involved in the school system, whether you're students or staff, there have been significant changes, and people continue to adapt. I am impressed every day at how the students coming to my school are wearing masks. It's natural for them to spray and clean their stations before and after they use them. This really is a significant change from the past, but the students are incredibly resilient. I guess I'm reminded of, if you're a Harry Potter fan, there's a character, Mad-Eye Moody, who would yell constant vigilance, and that's what was important to being safe. And we should be, of note today in Toronto, the person in charge of health in Ontario said this month they've had 3,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. We continue to work hard. It is incredibly important for us to be constantly vigilant, wash our hands, wear our masks when we're in public places, and also, be aware that there are folks out there who have great anxiety and stress over the situation we are in. So in support of others and to keep ourselves healthy, just a reminder to wear your mask, wash your hands, and be safe. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Deputy. Just a couple things for me. Certainly want to recognize and thank Uptown St. John for a very successful Burger Week last week. Certainly a different one as all restaurants continue to deal with COVID-19. I know I hit a personal record in 6 burgers over the week, so I thought that was pretty good. I know there's a few of my friends beat me, but I managed to get 6. As well, we concluded with our final open streets uptown. So I just wanted to thank certainly staff and efforts for all the volunteer hours that were put in. I know, people like Jennifer Walshoots, who worked countless hours, in her team, and all of the people who volunteered every Saturday it was running to really support the program. So I appreciate that. I certainly wanted to welcome and extend further to your welcome, Deputy, to all the new MLAs and to the newly soon to be, or I guess sworn in today, all of our MLAs and cabinet soon to be chosen. I certainly want to welcome them and remind them of the urgency of both, tax reform in St. John and our priority in that, as well as, coupled with projects like Funday Key and the new school in the South End, and the urgency to get these projects off the ground to continue the growth in our community and continue supporting and leverage the excitement and the enthusiasm around the development and the growth in St. John. I also wanted to mention one thing, a bit more troubling occurrence over the last week, and that was the explosion at American Iron and Metal, and certainly the ensuing fire that continued. And I just wanted to say I've heard from a lot of folks in the community about this, and certainly one that's very troubling for me. And I think what's resounding is that we must come together and develop a strategy that is focused on the neighborhood, and a strategy that is focused on ensuring cohesive support of the neighborhood with this issue as it continues to, in this case, the biggest incident we've seen in a long time. So I just wanted to recognize that as well. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Norton? You unmuted?
I am, Madam Deputy. Thank you very much. Just a couple pieces of good news as it relates to not only housing sales that are certainly hot, but also development that's happening in the city is also at historic highs. As it relates to home sales in the city of St. John, they're reaching new record highs in August, and the average home price reached a high of $203K, a 6.4% increase from this time last year. And for comparison, August sales were 23.7% jump over this time last year. So I think that's a real testament for those that are selling our city, both in the real estate sector, but also for those that are in the private sector, creating opportunities, and our team at City Hall that works tirelessly to demonstrate exactly why St. John is a choice community to purchase a home and relocate. As it relates to the development side of things, I think it's worth repeating. I know we've all seen it in the media, but a 10-year average for permit valuations at the end of July was $64 million. But as of the end of July for 2020 right now, the city had a permit valuation of $75 million. So that's up by $11 million, and this represents the second highest value at this point in the year when compared to values from the previous 10 years. And for reference, the highest on record was the year the Irving Oil Limited home office project permit was approved. So great job by the growth committee. Great job for we all play a small spoke in a big wheel, but together it looks like we're really we're certainly batting over 500. So hats off to everybody, and I hope that good news gets out there and is channeled in the right areas. So it's excellent news, and excellent news I like to read about and share at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. Okay, nobody else, I guess, so we'll move on. Common Clerk, please, next item. I think we got time for one, well, we got 4 minutes.
Yep, Deputy Mayor, we do have a proclamation, item 7.1 on your agenda, and it's for Wrongful Conviction Day, October.
Okay, whereas Wrongful Conviction Day is designated as an annual international day to recognize the tremendous personal, social, and legal costs associated with wrongful criminal convictions. Whereas this day recognizes those persons who have been forced to endure the tremendous consequences brought by a wrongful criminal conviction. Whereas the purpose of this day is to inform and educate the broader international community on the causes, consequences, and complications associated with wrongful criminal convictions. And more information can be found on this day on wrongfulconvictionday.com. Whereas it is important to raise awareness in order to work toward the prevention of further wrongful convictions and to direct the public's attention to this issue and generate support and understanding. Whereas Wrongful Conviction Day was spearheaded by the Wrongful Conviction Day Committee, and now many organizations are leading events in its honor. The committee is committed to raising awareness of and advocacy against wrongful convictions globally. Now, therefore, as the Deputy Mayor, Shirley McAlery of St. John, do hereby proclaim October 2nd, 2020 as Wrongful Conviction Day in the city of St. John. Thank you. Common Clerk, it's at 6:30, almost.
Just a couple minutes, Deputy, but we could do the general correspondence. They're usually fairly quick. The items.
Number 15, you mean? Go ahead.
Okay, so 15.1, Deputy Mayor, is UNBSJ request to present. Recommendation is refer to clerk for scheduling.
Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On the question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Item 15.2.
It's a request, Deputy Mayor, with respect to Purity Ice Cream Building, 111 City Road. It's a request to delay demolition and a request to present to council tonight. Recommendation is to deny the request.
Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Merrithew. On that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. Item 15.3.
This is a Cities of New Brunswick letter, Deputy Mayor. A congratulation note to Premier Higgs. Recommendation received for information.
Do we have a motion to receive and file? Moved by Councillor Merrithew, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On the question, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. We have another one?
6:30.
Yeah. Did we have
No, that
another
was
letter?
it for the,
Oh, okay.
that was it. Yep.
Okay.
So it's now 6:30 and we have advertised public hearings. And the first one on the list is 9.1. And this one is a proposed Section 59 amendment. It does have a Planning Advisory Committee report recommending the amendment, and it's for 30 King George Court. And Commissioner Hamilton will introduce this.
Okay, Commissioner Hamilton? Oh, there you are over there.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of council. Before you this evening is a proposed Section 59 amendment for a property at 30 King George Court in the city's north end. The purpose of the application before you is to permit the construction of a storage building, which is intended to serve the needs of the tenants of a recently constructed apartment building on the property. As the clerk mentioned, included in council's package are reports from both the city's Planning Advisory Committee as well as city staff recommending approval of the application. And while there's not a staff presentation this evening, Mr. Andrew Reed is the planner handling the file, and he's available on the line should there be any questions from the council. I would also note that Mr. Gordon Bro is available on behalf of the applicant, and my understanding is that there are no registered speakers for this evening's hearing.
Okay, well, thank you. Mr. Bro, did you wish to make any comments? Because we're not going to have the standard public hearing because nobody registered to speak for or against, so I don't have to call for the public hearing. But if you'd like to say anything, you're most welcome.
We're in favor of staff's report, and we've read the recommendations, and we're good with everything.
Okay, thank you. So do I have somebody that would make a motion to recommend Section 59 amendment? Councillor McKenzie, moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. On that question, is there any questions for staff or any questions? If not, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. So, Mr. Bro, it's all approved. Thank you very much. Common Clerk?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Next item is 9.2 on your agenda, and this one is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with the Planning Advisory Committee report recommending the rezoning for 4001 King Williams Road. This would be for first and second reading, and it is a public hearing. Commissioner Hamilton will provide a brief introduction.
Okay, Commissioner Hamilton?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, members of council, before you this evening is a proposed rezoning for a property at 4001 King William Road to rezone the property from medium industrial to green energy zone. The application is in support of the Birch Hill Wind Farm project and is intended to enable additional options for locating turbines in order to maximize exposure to favorable wind conditions. Included in council's package are reports from both the Planning Advisory Committee and staff recommending approval of the application. And while there's not a staff presentation this evening, I would note that Mr. Mark Reed is handling the file on behalf of staff and is available if there are questions of council. And I believe a representative from the applicant, Natural Forces, Ms. Meg Morris, is registered to speak as part of the public hearing. And apart from that, I don't believe there are other registered speakers for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. So you did say the proponent is online to speak or no? I don't see her on the list. So is there somebody here that's wanted to speak? There's no one registered to speak, is there?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, my understanding is Ms. Meg Morris, who's the representative from the applicant, has registered to speak, and I do see her online.
Oh, okay. So is she connected to our web?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, okay. Ms. Morris, would you like to, we're not going to have the regular public hearing because nobody from the public requested to speak for or against. So if you would like to say something to council, you can, and then we'll move forward with the readings.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll just say that we are in agreement with the staff and planning advisory committee recommendations. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Do I have someone that wishes to move first reading? Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Matthew. Okay, on the question of first reading, is there any questions for staff or Ms. Morris? If not, on the question of first reading, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Do I have a motion for second reading? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor McKenzie on the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Ms. Morris, you're okay. First and second reading, and at our next council meeting, we'll have third reading.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Common Clerk?
Deputy Mayor, just a little procedural thing. I have to read out the title.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John is first reading, and second reading is a law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
I will forget
And,
this.
9.3 on your agenda is the final public hearing for tonight, and it's a proposed zoning bylaw amendment with a planning advisory committee report which recommends the rezoning for 445 St. Martin's Road. This also is looking for first and second reading if council wishes to proceed, and Commissioner Hamilton will provide a brief introduction.
Okay, Commissioner Hamilton.
Deputy Mayor and members of council, before you this evening is a proposed rezoning for a property at 445 St. Martin's Road in a rural area of the city. And it's a rezoning from the rural zone to the neighborhood community facility zone, and also has related Section 59 amendments. So the purpose of the application is to allow the development of a proposed daycare center. And included in your package are reports from both staff and the Planning Advisory Committee recommending approval of the application. And while there's not a staff presentation this evening, Mr. Mark Reed is available if there are questions from members of council. And I understand the applicant, Ms. Dana Whiteneck, is registered to speak as part of the hearing, and there are no other registered speakers for this evening's hearing.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Ms. Whiteneck, would you like to speak? We're not having the regular type of public hearing because nobody else has indicated to speak in for or against, and you're the applicant. If you'd like to say something to council, please proceed.
Okay, so just basically that I agree with all the recommendations that the staff have provided. And I'm just here to answer any questions if need be.
Okay, thank you. Could I have somebody that would move first reading? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, is there any further questions for Ms. Whiteneck or for staff? If not, on first reading, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk, please, if you read.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw.
Do I have someone move second reading? Moved by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk, please.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, well, thank you. That's our public hearing. So, Common Clerk, next item, please.
Deputy Mayor, item 10.1 on your agenda is a vehicle for hire bylaw change report.
Okay. Mr. Collins, City Manager, you wish to speak?
Deputy Mayor, Mayors of Council, good evening. The item before you this evening is a recommendation for proposed changes to the vehicle for hire bylaw. You will recall many months ago, as part of our COVID initiatives for recovery, we were before council recommending that there be a temporary change in the age of taxis allowed within the City of St. John in order to help with the recovery efforts. It was stated at that time that it was temporary to the end of calendar year 2020, and that staff would be returning with a follow-on permanent recommendation sometime in the month of September. At that same meeting, there certainly was, and I wish to recognize, an expression of members of council to move forward with this, if at all possible. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce our Acting General Manager of Parking and Transit, Mr. Mark Dion, who is the overseer, if you will, of this particular bylaw, and who will explain the recommendations that we are putting forth before council. Mr. Dion.
Hey, Mr. Dion.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. So the city manager covered everything very well here. I'll quickly go through this, not to tie up anyone's time for too long, and open the floor up for questions thereafter. So as the city manager suggested, last year we put forward a motion whereby we would temporarily extend the age of the vehicles for hire taxis, from 7 years to 8 years. In doing so, we wanted to do that to help with the situation caused by COVID-19, and there was much consultation with all the different taxi industries in St. John, and they were all in support of this. Back in May 4th, 2020, this year, we obviously put in place a 1-year extension for that. And as the city manager mentioned, we want to now make this a permanent extension. Everyone likes benchmarking. We certainly did some of that. And, you know, we're on par with Moncton at 8 years. Fredericton happens to be at 6 years. And the city of Waterloo happens to be at 10 years. So we're exceeding there. There's many cities that don't even have any policies in place for this. I'd like to further note that, you know, there's no financial impact to the city if we make this extension, and it's really helping and supporting all those in the taxi industry to help them further and help support the city of St. John and the fact that we want to support jobs and help growth in the city. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Is there any questions, Councillor Blake Armstrong?
Thank you.
I thought you were in the restaurant cooking.
I'd like to move the recommendation, and I'd like to say to Mark and the city manager, thank you. Mark, I know you've worked extremely hard with this industry. You've put a tremendous amount of time, but most important, you listen to the industry. And in this recommendation, it shows, and I'm glad to hopefully move it forward. Hopefully, council will approve it. But again, thank you for all the work and listening to the industry. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Blake Armstrong. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Okay, anything else? Any other questions? If not, the motion is on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Oh, Councillor Norton, did you wish to speak? Councillor Norton?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. Mark, I'm totally in support of where this is going, and certainly we'll be supporting this change. as it relates to the this was done as a result to help the industry out, but also in a sense to provide some latitude to industry to help a struggling economy and a struggling sector, and to better meet the needs of the public looking for transportation options. Where are we with the ride sharing component that could be a part of this as well? Like, are you able to speak briefly to that? I know it's a little bit off, but is there anything that you can add to that conversation on that topic?
Probably. Mr. On, you may not even be involved in that yet. I don't think it's got that far.
If I may, Councillor Norton, we're still investigating everything right now with respect to ride sharing. We've contacted Uber in the past and a few different ride sharing companies. And at this point in time, we're still investigating it and seeing if we can make it happen.
Is it if you put the Uber thing aside, is the city of St. John open and accessible to the ride sharing industry if it was to find its way in here, whether it was a large ride sharing company or even a startup that was built and modified here for a St. John type of solution?
That might have to be a different report coming back at a different time.
Okay, and I do see the CM's hand up, so maybe he can speak to that.
City Manager, do you have anything?
Members of council, the entire notion of ride sharing needs to be addressed by the city of St. John. It was not a priority work project for us in 2020 because of everything else that we were looking at. I can commit that it will be looked at in 2021, and we will be coming back to council with a full report, analysis, etc., on the future of ride sharing within the city of St. John. I think we will be helped in that effort through a variety of different studies, reviews, and activities that we are undertaking, such as the transit review, such as perhaps a reorganization of the Transit Commission, etc. So there's a number of moving parts that should all line up so that we can come back to council sometime in 2021 and address your questions, Councillor Norton.
Thank you, City Manager, for that update.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey, did you have your hand up?
No. Briefly, Deputy, I just wanted to add, if we do go down the whole of ride sharing, it'd be very neat if we looked at options what a lot of municipalities, or some in particular in Ontario, have taken, where ride sharing subsidizes transit, which is pretty neat. There's some examples like companies like Face Drive and things like that out of Ontario that are doing that. I'll leave it there. I don't need a response from staff, but
we'll have a report.
I just wanted to mention that. Yeah, I don't want to go too far down there. I'll leave it there.
Later date for a report. On this motion for vehicle for hire bylaw changes on the question, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Dion. Thank you. City Manager, Common Clerk, next item.
Deputy Mayor, 12.1 on your agenda.
Okay, it's a City Manager update. City Manager, please.
Members of council, this is a standing agenda item where I take advantage of this opportunity to provide short updates on various projects and initiatives that are of interest not only to this council, but to our public and our businesses that work and reside within the city of St. John. Tonight, I wish to cover a number of miscellaneous points. First of all, in terms of our budget implementation for 2021, we remain on track for that implementation. Council has approved the draft budget, and now our next step is to wait for the tax roll to be provided by the province to us that will indicate our tax base for 2021. We anticipate that tax roll somewhere in early to mid-November, at which point we will make any necessary adjustments to the draft budget. I do wish to remind council that council has already approved from where those adjustments would be made should adjustments be required. So in short, we are very much on track for that 2021 budget that sees a significant reduction in the overall financial expenditures of the city of St. John. For the 2020 budget, the budget that we are currently in, that too remains on track. We are still anticipating over a $4 million shortfall in revenue for this year, but we have already adjusted our costs to compensate for that. And unless things change, there should be no further cost adjustments required. Those adjustments began back in March, 2 days prior to the provincial declaration of a provincial state of emergency, and we have been closely monitoring and tracking since that time. So again, as a city manager, to offer my perspective, I think we are doing well in terms of ensuring that we will have a balanced budget at the end of the year. My next point, the deputy mayor mentioned that we are in the process of a move to the new city hall. The move sounds more grand than it is. It's actually just a relocation down approximately 4 floors from our current location in the same building. The new spaces will be fully functional. Our anticipated date for that is 13 October, and that is when all of the new spaces will be available for public purposes. Most of the staff have moved into their new spaces now. We have 1 floor left to complete, and that is the customer service floor. Therefore, there may be requirements in the next week to 10 days to make announcements of short stoppage of service delivery in terms of cashier services or things like that in order to complete the move. I believe the staff has done an exceptional job so far minimizing those disruptions. In fact, we haven't closed anything at this point in time in order to complete the move. And certainly our intent is to minimize disruptions as we complete it in the next couple of weeks. By way of background, I just would like to remind everybody that the last time City Hall saw any major renovations was 1971. That is almost 50 years ago. So certainly a facelift and an improvement to the work conditions was warranted in that regard. But more importantly, and what has been driving this effort is that by the reallocation of space and the changing of our space, our rental fees for the total of City Hall we will be saving more than $700,000 a year in total rental fees, which is a significant savings on our overall budget. With the move, the next council meeting should not be required to be on WebEx, but rather an in-person meeting on Tuesday, the 13th of October, the day after Thanksgiving, in the council chambers that has been renovated, but is in the same location. For the benefit of the public and the media, we will be implementing all necessary COVID-19 protocols for these in-person meetings, and therefore attendance in person will be limited. We will allow it, but only to capacity to honor the COVID-19 protocols. We have put in the necessary adjustments in terms of electronics so that we can continue to broadcast our council meetings both on YouTube and on Rogers TV. And therefore, although certainly public attendance in person is available, we are nonetheless encouraging, because of COVID-19, that wherever possible, the public participate in council meetings remotely by either accessing YouTube or Rogers TV. Turning to the next subject, customer service, we have briefed at length about the integrated customer service approach that we are taking, if you will, a one-stop shop idea for everything to do with customer service. I will tell you that our integrated customer service team will be in its new location as well on 13 October, which is the bottom floor of the City Hall building. And this will be the one-stop location moving forward. I would, however, like to stress that the co-location of this customer service is only the first step in a journey. They will be co-located, but they will not be yet fully integrated. We still have to purchase and train on the software, develop the analytics, develop the training programs, etc. And therefore, we are still aiming for full implementation of our integrated customer service for Thursday, the 7th of January, 2021, a few months from now. But certainly there will be a different look and feel as of the 13th of October. Next point, I would be remiss with a new government in place at the provincial level and cabinet being announced tomorrow that the City of St. John remains focused on moving forward on the transformational reforms. We did send during the election campaign a discussion paper to all political parties, including the Conservative Party, which was elected into office. There was also a letter from the 8 cities speaking about those necessary transformational reforms. With cabinet being announced on Tuesday, we should very shortly thereafterwards be able to re-engage with the provincial government and continue the work on all of the transformational reforms. But I'll highlight perhaps the first 3 that need our continued attention. That is to say, regional cost sharing, comprehensive property tax reform, and changes to binding arbitration. We clearly have work to do other than the transformational reforms, and therefore at staff level, we continue to do the review of the agency's boards and commissions. Some of that work was slowed due to the pandemic, but will continue in the coming months. We also owe to council our implementation plan on the Ernst & Young report. That plan is still planned to be presented to council at the end of the month of October. Finally, a couple of very small miscellaneous points. The first one is important to many families in the City of St. John, and that is the subject of Halloween. The approach that we are taking as staff is we have not provided any recommendations to council at this point, and we do not intend to do so until we receive direction and guidance and recommendations from the provincial level, and specifically the Chief Medical Officer of Health. We have been told that that guidance is forthcoming soon, and we wait for that before engaging council on any decisions that may be required within the City of St. John. We have been very good since the beginning of this pandemic at conforming to provincial direction and recommendations, and we certainly would strongly suggest that we need to continue to follow that approach moving forward. And finally, Councillor Hickey, to a degree, stole my thunder, but I would like to recognize some of the recovery efforts that went on this summer by your city staff team, most notably the open streets and the Thursday night city market. Neither one of those initiatives happened by accident. Both required significant staff work outside of normal working hours. In short, they volunteered their time to put these efforts in place. And as city manager, I would simply like to recognize that tremendous effort from all those who were involved in those 2 initiatives. I'm simply looking for a receive and file. Subject to your questions, that concludes the city manager's update for this council meeting.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Do I have a recommendation? Somebody move and receive and file. Moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Merrithew. On the question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk, please.
Deputy Mayor, 12.2 is a staff report for a demolition of a vacant, dilapidated, and dangerous building at 123 to 125 Main Street.
Do I have somebody move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Casey. The staff there, I don't really have to call for anybody that wishes to make a presentation on this or make a different suggestion, because nobody has registered. They have to register ahead of time, so we have no persons registered. So staff.
Commissioner of Growth, please.
Pardon me?
If you could pass the floor to Commissioner of Growth, please.
Fine, City Manager, I'll do that. We'll ask our Commissioner Jacqueline Hamilton, please, to report. If you have or is Mr. Ben Jordan?
Deputy Mayor and members of council, before you this evening are recommendations to proceed with the demolition of 2 dangerous and vacant building files in the city north end in both items 12.2 and 12.3. These files do continue the momentum on the successful city's dangerous and vacant buildings program, which was only just restored in July of this year, however, has seen significant progress. We have resolved 31 case files to date, with an adjusted target to resolve 50 by the end of the year. And I would note that the majority of resolved cases do involve repair and reoccupancy of vacant buildings, which is certainly the outcome that we strive to achieve with this program. For the two applications before you this evening at 123 and 135 Main Street, I can confirm that although we don't have registered speakers for you this evening, the staff did reach out to the property owners and notify them of their opportunity to speak this evening. And with that as an introduction, I would now turn things over to Mr. Ben Purinton, who's our city engineer, who can provide a brief overview of the two files before you this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. I'll just share my screen quickly. Good evening, Your Deputy Mayor and councilors. I'll be providing a brief overview for the two files related to the dangerous and vacant building program that you have before you, items 12.2 and 12.3 of the agenda. Beginning with item 12.2, staff recommendation for the building located at 123 to 125 Main Street is demolition. The building is a 3-story, 3-unit apartment building located in the city's north end. The building is a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of being vacant and by reason of dilapidation. The property has been abandoned. The following photographs of the building's condition can be found on pages 298 to 307 of the council packet. The interior photos were taken during a February internal inspection prior to any fire occurring at the building. We'll go through the photos. Here's the exterior of the building. And the interior.
Okay. Is that your report for 123 to 125?
It is, yes.
Okay, has it been moved? I think I already asked for someone to move it. Did you already move it? Common clerk? Common clerk?
Deputy Mayor, I didn't catch a move.
No, okay, so can somebody move the demolition for 123, 125 Main Street? Moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, Councillor Hickey, you have a question?
I do, Deputy, if I can.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ben, just thank you very much for this. This is certainly another really good example of the need to grow this program and continue doing what we're doing to build better neighborhoods and make sure that we're addressing issues like this. Given concerns, or I guess given some commentary from the community around our past projects in the vacant and dilapidated building, can you just walk us through quickly the advertising process that goes to putting these buildings in this position and how they get identified, as to, in terms of development, if you could, just at a high level?
Sure, Councillor Hickey. So we do get notified that a building is vacant through a number of means. Different triggers like the water being turned off, or citizen complaints, building inspector referrals, things of that nature. From that, we assess the hazard of the property through various external inspections. And if we determine there's a need for an internal inspection, we proceed in that manner. Once an internal inspection is completed on a property, we determine if a notice to comply is needed to be issued. If we do need to issue a notice to comply, we provide timelines for the property owner to either repair the building, or demolish. We also post that notice to comply to the building. We send it via registered mail, and we post it as well on title for the building for any potential buyers to see the notice to comply and know that the city has, I guess, issue with the property. So those are kind of our checks and balances. And then if that notice is not complied with, then we do proceed to council with recommendation for demolition.
Thank you, Mr. Puritan.
Thanks very much, Ben. I appreciate it.
Councillor McKenzie, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Deputy. Ben, thanks very much for all that you're doing on this file. These places got to go. I guess my question is, I understand these two, but 135 Main Street, which we're
could we hold that because we're just doing 125, 123, 125.
Okay, well, let's stick with those two then. If they were to catch fire multiple times, would it not be cheaper for the city to just let them burn down as long as there's nothing next to them that could catch fire, like a building that has people living in it? Like, if they're standalones and they're going to be torn down anyway and they keep catching fire, why wouldn't we just let them burn down?
You probably can't answer that.
Maybe the fire chief can. Maybe there's a reason why we can't do it. I don't know.
Well, Councillor McKenzie, there is potential that, and it may not catch to another building, but it could catch to grass or trees and spread that way and cause additional damage to not just the building, but also the surrounding lot. Furthermore, I believe that sorry.
That's okay. I think the city manager wants to say something, but I think it's our duty to.
Yeah, if I may, it's a nice concept, but the reality is we cannot put our fire crews in the position of making a determination as to whether or not a building should or should not be saved. They go there, they assess it based on the tactical situation, and they do an appropriate fire response for the building. But it would be unfair of us to ask the people who are on the ground doing the tactics to make that determination. So I just don't think we can get into that business, not to mention the potential damage to underground infrastructure, et cetera, that occurs with fires. The role of the fire department is to control fires, extinguish fires, and above all else, protect individuals from life or limb injuries. And I think that's where the focus needs to stay.
Okay, on the recommendation for 123 to 125 Main Street, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. The next item is, Common Clerk, you want to read it out for the record?
Yes, Deputy. 12-3 is another vacant, dilapidated building demolition request at 135 Main Street.
We've had a presentation on that. Is there anything additional you wanted to say on that, Mr. Puritan?
Deputy Mayor, I do have a separate presentation for 135 Main Street.
Go ahead.
So item 12.3, staff recommendation for the building located at 135 Main Street, 5 Albert Street is demolition. The building is a 3-story, 3-unit apartment building located in the city's north end. The building is a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of being vacant, by reason of dilapidation, and by reason of unsoundness of structural strength. Since the notice to comply was issued, multiple fires have occurred at the property, causing the building's condition to worsen. To note, competitive bidding on the demolition will be closing on Wednesday should the recommendation be approved. The contract will be awarded shortly thereafter. The following photographs of the building's condition can be found on pages 331 to 340 of the council packet. The interior photos were taken during a February internal inspection prior to a fire occurring at the building. So I'll go through the photos. Here's the exterior of the building. And the interior. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Puritan. Would somebody please move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Casey. On the question, anyone have a question on 135 Main Street? If not, on the question, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. Okay, next item, Council Clerk.
Deputy Mayor, next item is 12.4 on your agenda. It's an update on Move SJ, St. John's new transportation plan. Commissioner Hugenholtz will introduce it.
Okay, Councillor or Commissioner Michael Hugenholtz. Go ahead.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of Council. In recent weeks, there's been a lot of discussion at Council about various things, especially around active transportation. Staff will be coming to Council in the upcoming weeks with the final draft strategies for Move SJ, the final phase. To set the stage for that and provide some additional context, we felt it important to sort of recap where we are with Move SJ, what's been presented so far, what are the final pieces to come. As it has been particularly for phase one, it's been several years since we embarked on this journey. With that brief introduction, I'll turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Mr. O'Reilly for a presentation.
Okay, Mr. Riley, Mr. O'Reilly. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good evening, Common Council. So as Commissioner Hugenholtz mentioned, the purpose for this evening is to do a brief presentation on the status of Move SJ and lead up to some future presentations on different components of phase 3, the final phase of the project. St. John's transportation system does have some challenges presented to it, some unique to our city, some of them more commonly shared with other municipalities. The transportation plan that we're currently using within the city is from 1999, and that is actually more focused on cars and trucks as opposed to other modes of transportation. There are other modes of transportation available that are also important to this community that need to be a priority in a strategic plan going forward. Many streets in St. John that people live on are also main arterial and collector streets built up over the years, result of urban development and urban sprawl within our city, something that our municipal plan is going to correct. Our north and south ends of the city, as well as east and west sides of the city, are bisected from some substantial infrastructure, such as Highway 1 and the St. John River, which present their own challenges for getting around the city effectively. We do have a lot of mixed uses within St. John in terms of land, including in the heart of the city. A lot of those require truck traffic to travel to and from those businesses. We do have a lot of hills in St. John and mixed weather, especially in the wintertime, which creates some challenges that are quite unique to St. John. And of course, we have some current financial challenges that are facing the city. However, with most challenges, there are opportunities that are presented. And certainly in this case, this is the case. And we look at where the city is on the cusp of in terms of future, it certainly does look bright, and there's opportunities to pursue a different strategy regarding transportation. For example, you, our Common Council, have made active in public transportation modes a priority that has also helped shape some of the efforts that we'll be discussing in the remainder of this presentation. I do need to give credit to our Growth and Community Services Department and the public for developing a municipal plan and a central neighborhood secondary plan. Both documents have priority given to active modes of transportation. The timing of completion of Move SJ, which will be done at the end of this year, has some excellent timing in terms of lining up with the start of a strategic plan for the city of St. John, which we'll talk about a bit later in the presentation. If I could describe one model, an aspirational goal that our new transportation plan of Move SJ is intended to achieve, it would be the straightforward phrase that's up on the screen right now. With Move SJ, we are approaching transportation in our city in a different way. It shouldn't matter your abilities or mode of transportation that you choose to take. Our aspirational goal is that accessibility and safety for all are top priorities. Virtually every aspect of Move SJ that we've completed thus far, and we're completing right now as part of phase 3, are intended to continuously move towards that aspirational goal for transportation in our city. We have stuck with some common themes in working on a transportation plan that's currently under development. There's a strong cross-dependency between growth of our city and the ability to provide access to and from that growth for both people and goods. Transportation is an infrastructure-heavy service, and therefore the importance of considering the service and cost implications throughout the life cycle of these assets needs strong alignment with city policies. The province plays a big role in terms of transportation within our city, both from a legislative and regulatory perspective that guide the city's authorities with how we can regulate traffic within our own city streets. And also there's the fact that we have provincial highways that both surround our city, but also cut through the heart of it. The province plays a huge part in moving transportation within the city going forward. Although we are looking at aspects unique to one transportation mode and several of them in this phase, we're also remaining mindful of the interdependencies between these different transportation modes, including the fact they need to share limited right-of-way space and the fact that some trips completed by citizens actually incorporate multiple forms of transportation. Just consider a ride on one of our transit buses, for example. Often a pedestrian has to use the sidewalk or cross the street in order to access that bus stop. The same thing for somebody who chooses to ride a bike to the bus stop, put their bike on the bus and go on the rest of their trip. A lot of interdependencies between modes of transportation that we're considering. A lot of MoveSJ is about using data and best practices to manage risk. Our transportation network is not risk-free, and it is important that we effectively use limited resources where safety or access can be best improved. Transportation safety can be best achieved through the 3 E's of transportation safety, being engineering solutions, enforcements of the rules of the road by our St. John Police Force, and finally, and most importantly, education and involvement of our community at large. We are all part of our transportation system as motorists, cyclists, pedestrians, transit users, etc. MoveSJ places focus on the actions each of us can take to improve access and safety for all. MoveSJ includes both short and long-term improvements, which we'll focus on later in this presentation. Finally, although MoveSJ will soon be completed as a comprehensive plan, it is meant to be a living document as we continue to find new ways to strive towards that aspirational goal I already spoke of. As Commissioner Higginbotham mentioned, it has been a couple of years since we started MoveSJ. It was 2015, and we are completing that in 3 phases, with the final phase, phase 3, being completed this year. We will be back to talk about the different components of phase 3 in future council meetings within 2020. The plan is comprehensive and focuses on these various interconnected transportation modes. Each phase of the plan has included community engagement, including for phase 3 that will be planned for later this year. Similar to what we completed successfully with phase 2, we plan to bring each of these components of phase 3 back before council in draft format ahead of the public consultation. There's simply too much content within each of these phases to have a very effective dialogue with council to bring the entire components of each phase in its entirety for that discussion. If there's one message I can leave with you with this slide, it would be that when we said we were committed to striving towards a transportation plan that was intended to provide safe transportation mode choices to our citizens, we meant it. Along with developing a new transportation plan for our city's future, I can say proudly that we have not waited to begin achieving this aspirational goal, some of it under the leadership of this common council. Whether it be updating our sidewalk infrastructure standards, developing a traffic calming policy that fairly and effectively addresses speeding on our streets, expanding trails for all active transportation modes on limited right-of-way that we do have, creating 2 cycling arterials throughout the city, successfully undertaking a number of road diets that provided more dedicated space on roads to cyclists, using opportunities and already planned capital projects to make improvements for pedestrians and cyclists, sustaining a focused program since 2014 that invests in safety improvements for some of our most vulnerable pedestrians that walk to and from school, or undertaking annual enhancements to crosswalks using technology wherever possible. We are already well under our way to serving all transportation modes going forward. One project in this list, being the Main Street temporary bike lane, was only in place for a couple of seasons a few years ago. However, it is significant in a number of ways, including use of a number of firsts in terms of design standards for providing access for cyclists and revealing some of the opportunities for clarity improvements within our own Provincial Motor Vehicle Act. And I'll focus a bit more on this project in a subsequent council meeting to do with the cycling strategy. MoveSJ will have a number of comprehensive and frankly expensive recommendations that will require patience from our community to see implemented within a broader strategic plan for the city, which will be discussed in a couple of minutes. I can say, however, that in addition to involving some very talented third-party experts in developing MoveSJ, your city staff who engages with our community on a day-to-day basis has been intimately involved in creating our transportation plan to ensure that it responds to the community's needs and involves what I would call on-the-ground solutions that are less expensive and can be implemented in a much shorter time frame. We plan to begin pursuing these solutions, making MoveSJ real for our community as soon as MoveSJ is completed within the next couple of months. Up on the screen are a list of projects we plan to undertake in 2021. Some of these have already been vetted by the public through previous phases of MoveSJ, but we will be open to further input during upcoming engagement sessions for phase 3. We'll be making improvements in 2021 on University Avenue. It currently has 4 lanes for traffic. 2 of them are considered lanes that cyclists have to share with vehicles. We developed that as part of the Campus Harbor Connection bike route to the university and hospital area. This will change in 2021 by taking 2 of these lanes and converting them from vehicle lanes to dedicated cycling lanes. This road diet project is also expected to create safety enhancements for crosswalks along University Avenue and will likely feed into another more specific safety improvement project that we'll be working on in a couple of months as well. Long-standing programs such as the Safer School Zone program and crosswalk signal programs will continue in 2021. We will start to address a common concern we receive about pedestrians not having enough time to cross the streets at crosswalks in 2021 by increasing the time that people can cross. And we will be recommending enhancements to our traffic calming policy that will be before council in 2021 as well. Early in MoveSJ, we addressed concerns from Common Council about speed limits on residential streets, starting with Anglin Drive, resulting from as a result of a community-initiated project. We plan to recommend the council adopts a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit on streets that warrant it based on national guidelines. We'll be initiating several projects resulting from the goods movement strategy that continue to respect the needs to move truck within our community for industry and heavy commercial sectors, while seeking quality of life balance for our citizens. We'll be back before Common Council on the cycling strategy and discuss some of the potential improvements to the Provincial Motor Vehicle Act that will benefit various transportation modes. Not up on the screen, but is equally important for 2021. We do plan to make an adjustment to our traffic line painting program next year, where we're going to place a higher priority on painting symbols for our for cyclists within St. John. These are all important and more immediate improvements for our community, but as I mentioned, MoveSJ will also include more comprehensive changes that require a broader strategic perspective. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Ian Fogan, the city's Director of Strategic Services, to provide a link to the city's overall strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. I just want to remind just a little bit to council with the alignment of our transportation MoveSJ along with the strategic plan. During the strategic planning process, we will be really defining what is the city that we want to be in 10 years' time. So the strategic plan is going to contain those objectives that the community wants and the strategies to get there. Some of those strategies that Tim just outlined. And including that, we'll specifically, just as Tim did on the last slide, will contain the tactics in the annual work plan. So you'll be able to see some of these plans move forward. Also, you'll never lose sight of them. So if it's active transportation as part of your overall strategic plan, it'll be contained there, updated annually, feeds into your work plan, and it will always be top of mind as we update this living document and year over year. And with that, we'll also report back on measured performance. We'll show you every year what has been implemented and how those strategies are leading towards your objectives. And with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. O'Reilly to finish off.
Thank you, Mr. Fogan. We should be proud of our current and future plans towards serving transportation needs of St. Johners and continuing towards that overall aspirational goal of serving St. John, no matter the mode of choice for transportation they choose. As I mentioned, we'll be back before council and future council meetings towards the resulting months of 2020 to talk about the specific components of phase 3 ahead of public engagement and then final approval of phase 3 and the transportational plan overall. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the city manager for some closing remarks. City manager.
Thanks very much, Mr. O'Reilly. There's no doubt that there's a lot we can do that is not expensive. That just requires some effort and some thought, and we will undertake that. But there's also quite a bit we need to do that will be expensive. My sense as your city manager, and I apologize, it's only a sense, I don't have any firm facts one way or the other, but my sense is that we have not been as good as perhaps we can be in terms of going out and getting funding for these sorts of projects. There are provincial and federal initiatives that can be tapped into, and I just don't think we've done as effective a job as perhaps we should. That's not intentional, it's simply a question of capacity. So as part of the structural reshift in City Hall, we have created, re-rolled a commissioner to new title of Commissioner of Infrastructure and Utilities, and that's Mr. Brent McGovern. And on his team, he has a very capable manager who has done very good work in terms of leveraging other people's money when it comes to climate change and green initiatives. And that's Mr. Samir Yamin. He's been a bit of a dog with a bone, if you will, in terms of his tenacity to go out and find other sources of funding to deal with climate change. That he will continue to do, but we are now broadening his responsibilities so that he can now go out and be our advocate for funding for transportation, including active transportation initiatives moving forward. So I just wanted to highlight that as a slight structural change to help us improve and perhaps secure some additional funding from other sources. And with that, I would like to hand it back over to council and to Mr. O'Reilly to deal with any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to all the presenters on it. Move St. John. Is there any questions from council? Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Deputy. More of a comment, I guess. I'm liking some of the ideas. I'd like to see us have a good focus on active transportation and transportation in general, I suppose. But I'd just like us to focus on it, have a clear focus, not just go out and get money for the sake of getting money that, you know, is, for example, not going to connect to anything or something like that. I'd like to see us focus on, you know, if we're going to do bike lanes, let's focus on protecting them, maybe even getting them off the street or away from the street. Things like that many cities have done. So I'd like to see us focus on that aspect. So have a clear vision of what we're doing, where we're going. So I'm looking forward to further discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tim, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for your work on this. Certainly an exciting, I think, transition in attitude around how we get around our city and how we talk about accessibility to transportation and things like that. You know, you prefaced your comments in saying that there'd be increased accessibility for all means of transportation, which I don't really agree with. But then I think once you got into it, you know, you made it clear. You know, there's needs to slow down traffic in places. There's needs to be met from an active transportation perspective. There's needs and investments that need to be taken in our transit system and ensuring accessibility there. and I hope that that's the focus. I hope that it's not, the focus is around increasing the areas of transportation that we have not always necessarily been focused on. And I think it's certainly a message from council, especially after a presentation that like we had from Cycling St. John, for example, and then the concurrent motion that came out of that. So I think those speak to where we're headed from a Move SJ perspective and from a transportation perspective holistically around the city. And I think that's really exciting. I think it really speaks to the new attitude and the new vision we have for the city. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm glad that you guys are focused on that. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I just want to make a comment. We talk about active transportation and everybody getting involved. And one thing that many people in St. John are good at, they like to walk. And that's in any area in St. John. We have a lot of people that walk. And it's unfortunate that we don't have great sidewalks. In some areas we do because we had them redone. But like there's so many areas in the city that the sidewalks are crumbly, they're broken. It's very difficult to walk on them, especially if the weather's not perfect. So like, when you talk about bike lanes on University Avenue, for instance, and I grant you that probably there would be cyclists that use University Avenue. I'm not sure whether they're going to come out and go up Somerset because that's a huge hill. But the sidewalks on University Avenue, like if I had money, I would be more concerned about the sidewalks because there's sidewalks on University Avenue that citizens have complained about. They can't even, people that are in some of the senior homes in that area have a hard time walking on some of those sidewalks because they're up and down, they're crumbly. They're not good sidewalks because we've not been able to afford to redo them. Even when we've sometimes had the streets repaved in the past, we can't always rebuild the sidewalk. So I don't know whether we'd ever have extra money to do, but that's really something. It doesn't matter what area of the city you are. There's some of the streets downtown that have been redone and the sidewalks have been rebuilt, but there's many streets, sidewalks, whether it's on the west side or the east side or the north. They just haven't been done for years and people walk on them and it's not the greatest pleasure walking on some of our sidewalks. And that's a great, there's more people that walk for a healthy lifestyle, than ever before, that people want to walk at all during the year. So I just bring that comment to the attention of everyone that's involved in transportation, because if we had money, we should try to rebuild some of our sidewalks, even if we can't get the streets all done. Just my comment, because I hear it all the time about how people have difficulties walking around in some of the streets, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just that we haven't been able to have the money to do it. And then there's other streets that we don't have sidewalks on at all, but people live there and they like to walk. And now people retire earlier and they walk at off times of the day, and it's a great pastime in St. John, people walking more so than cyclists. But Kim, you might want to comment on it.
Yeah, well, I think this probably goes with, I guess, all three members of council that have spoken so far. Really, our new transportation plan we're talking about is really changing the focus in St. John. Again, getting rid of the car-centric focus that we've been like that for a number of years to a more holistic approach to transportation. And again, whether it's cycling, walking, a Move SJ is a starting point, not a finishing point. And so we have standards in place for inspections of sidewalks. We have standards in place with how sidewalks should be built to ensure they're accessible by all members of our community. But that's going to take some time to get there for sure. But again, now that we are moving towards having a new transportation plan and that aspirational goal of getting there, this is going to align very well as, again, Ian Fogan's discussion about the strategic plan for the city and how our investments should be going forward. So it's just a change in focus. We have a lot of work to do, but it's a new focus compared to the folks we had in the past.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. So, City Manager?
Your Worship, the CFO would be remiss if I didn't bring up the following point in terms of a bit of management of expectations here. We do have an approved by council capital expenditure policy. And I just want to remind the public that when it comes to capital expenditures, we have the 90-10 rule, whereby of all the money that we can put towards capital, 90% of it is to go towards repairing the infrastructure we already have, and sidewalks would fall into that. Because we have over a $400 million infrastructure deficit of stuff that is at or beyond usable life. 90% of our capital expenditures goes towards that, and 10% goes towards new stuff and new infrastructure. That's why it's going to be so fundamentally important through the auspices of the strategic plan, through the public consultations for Move SJ, that we truly map out a future whereby we make best use of our limited dollars and then go after more money from other sources. Because at the end of the day, and council has heard me say this before, any plan that's not resource is nothing but a hallucination. So we do need to think through the money issues. And the way to do that is to make sure that we do achieve the public consultation, we get the necessary inputs, and then we prioritize properly based on the policies of this council and of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. So on the question, would somebody move the recommendation receive and file? Moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Casey. On the question, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Is everybody still with us? I see a couple of councillors. I can't see them. I don't know whether they're voting. Do we still have enough for a quorum here, or Common Clerk? I don't see everybody, that's all. So just...
No, that's a good point, Deputy Mayor, that we would ask the councillors to please turn on their cameras so we could...
Yeah, so if you're still with the committee or still on the meeting, would you please put your camera on so we can see you? Okay, thank you. Next item, Common Clerk, please.
12.5, Deputy Mayor, it's update number 2, water levels in South Bay Wellfield. Commissioner...
It was Commissioner McGovern. So Brent, I don't know where you are.
Good evening.
I kind of look around this screen, that's how I can see everybody. So if I don't see you, then I think you're not there. Okay.
Good evening, members of council. This report is on the agenda to continue sharing information as it relates to water levels in South Bay Wellfield. On February 13th, 2020, 6 neighborhoods in West St. John were transitioned from the South Bay Wellfield as their primary drinking water source to drinking water from the Loch Lomond Drinking Water Treatment Facility. When we made the transition, the water level was approximately 1.75 meters below sea level. And at our last update in May of this year, the water levels had risen to approximately 0.25 meters above sea level. Since that time, the water level in each of the wells has continued to rise. And we now have 2 wells above the required 1 meter above mean sea level and 1 that is slightly below. But to put that in perspective, the water levels in the wells have recovered approximately 3 meters or 10 feet in 7 months. So that is good news. We will continue to monitor water levels and will continue to report back to council until such time as water levels in all wells exceed the requirement of 1 meter above sea level. With that, thank you, Your Worship, and back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGovern. So we need a motion to receive and file, and moved by Councillor Casey, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. So we're going to hopefully that these levels will increase as time moves forward to get a bit higher. And Mr. McGovern.
That's correct, Your Worship. The wells continue on an upward trend. So that is good news. That's what we're continuing to monitor. And we expect in the near future, we will be able to report back that all wells are above the regulatory required 1 meter.
Okay, thank you very much. So on the question, on the recommendation, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. I think I'd ask, is Councillor Blake Armstrong still with us, or have you left the meeting? I'm assuming he's left the meeting. The next item, Common Clerk, please. We still have.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Armstrong is showing here.
I'm still here.
I want you to put your camera on. It should have your cameras on, so we know you're there. Thank you.
Look at the screen. It's on the screen, Deputy.
It is now, but it wasn't. Okay, go ahead. Common Clerk, please.
12.6, Deputy Mayor, is Safe Clean Drinking Water Project Final Completion Milestone Report. Again, Commissioner McGovern will introduce this.
Okay. So this is a big night for us. So Mr. McGovern, you're going to give us a report on the completed project, and it was under budget.
That's correct, Your Worship. If you give me a moment here, I'll get my screen set up, and hopefully everyone can see that. I think have to make one further adjustment to it here.
Members who are attending at this point, it's the city manager. We're starting to get some feedback. Can I ask those who are not presenting or not speaking, please go on to mute if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Are you able to see my screen, and is it showing a split screen?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'll just take a moment here and see if I can get the split screen to go away. It was working earlier. And is that now get rid of the split screen?
That's right. You're okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your patience as that was set up. Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. And with me this evening is Dean Price, project manager for the entire duration of the Safe Clean Drinking Water Project. I will cover off some of the presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Price, who will cover off some slides, and he will turn it back to me to wrap up the presentation. So the purpose of the presentation this evening is threefold: to mark the very significant milestone of final completion, to reflect on some key outcomes, and key facts, and to provide an update on the financials of the project at the final completion period. And I'd also add a fourth to give thanks to all those involved in such a critical project for the city of St. John. The Safe Clean Drinking Water Project really got underway on the construction side of things in November 2015, when the previous council entered into an agreement with Port City Water Partners. Construction began in the spring of 2016. The wells and the new Loch Lomond drinking water treatment facility were entered into service in 2017 and 2018. Substantial completion was achieved in June of 2019, and now final completion has been achieved on August 31st, 2020. The independent party known as the independent certifier, who has been involved in the project throughout the construction, is the one who declared the project has achieved final completion. The certificate, as you can see up on your screen here, essentially means that all the deficiencies have now been addressed and all documentation has been turned over to the city. Some key outcomes of the project for St. John are that we now deliver safe, clean drinking water to all citizens. Public health is protected from waterborne disease. Water quality meets New Brunswick and Canada's drinking water quality guidelines. City of St. John meets its regulatory approval to operate, and critical infrastructure is now in place for the growth and development of St. John. This next slide, as you can see on the photo, it essentially shows the color of the drinking water before full treatment was put in place. On your left, you see the raw water, and on the right, you see the fully treated drinking water from our new Loch Lomond drinking water treatment facility. On this next slide, similarly, you see the Spruce Lake water on the left and the South Bay Wellfield groundwater on the right. The reason we had high color in that discoloration in our drinking water before was really because of what you see on the left of your screen now. This is the screen that essentially provided the treatment for our drinking water previously, that combined with the addition of some chlorine. Now we have sophisticated water treatment facility, as you see on your right, that provides high quality drinking water and also a groundwater system, both of which provide drinking water that meets or exceeds provincial and national guidelines. In terms of some fast facts, the Safe Clean Drinking Water Project is the largest municipal project in the history of the province of New Brunswick. Industrial water is now separated from the potable water system. All users were kept in service with water while we were rebuilding the system. I would add Canada's first drinking water system. 13 large project components were spread out all over the city. This was a highly complex project. We experienced had experienced contaminated soils in numerous locations. The team rehabilitated cast iron pipes from the mid to late 1800s by slip lining new pipes inside the old. Bedrock, as many can appreciate, is a challenge in St. John, and it was on this project, along with river crossings and bad weather that we experienced at time. But thanks to gravity, all water that flows to the new water treatment facility flows by gravity. There's no need to pump it to the facility. It flows from the lakes that sit high above the city down into the new water treatment facility. By the numbers, there were nearly 1,000 tons of rebar used on this project, 1,350 truckloads of asphalt or tons of asphalt. We rehabilitated 3 dams, and there was water storage reservoirs added with the capacity of 33 million liters, which Mr. Price will talk about here in a bit. This next slide, the first bullet you'll see is quite remarkable. Over 1 million work hours, person hours worked on this project. Over 1,050,000 person hours. And the second bullet is also just as important or more important. The work done by Port City Water Partners was done very safely. And this number is quite remarkable when you think of well over 1 million labor hours and really one relatively minor lost time incident on this entire project. There were over 3,256 construction drawings created during the design build phase, 865 permanent digital record drawings to record the location and the details of all the infrastructure, and 26 kilometers of pipe installed, so over 4,500 lengths of pipe. With that, Your Worship, I'll turn it over to Mr. Price now, who's going to walk us through some of the construction slides, and then he'll turn it back to me before we wrap it up.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. So the first project I want to mention real briefly is one of 3 dam projects. So we rehabilitated 3 dams. So the first one is the Robertson Lake Dam. And the most obvious feature here is the big concrete spillway. So this dam was built around 1905, and it's had some repairs over the years, but it was definitely due for a major refurbishment. So there was extensive work done to the spillway. As you can see, a lot of the concrete surface of the spillway was redone, and several walls were added and rebuilt. So that's the first dam that we rehabilitated. The next one is there we go. Oh, sorry, I forgot about that slide. So that's the finished product. That's you can see in the wintertime the rehabilitated dam, which is in good shape for several more years to go. So the next dam was at the Latimer Lake facility. So we've improved and increased the height of the earthen dams at Latimer Lake to meet the Canadian Dam Association guidelines. So now we have much better control of the runoff in high weather or storm weather. So that's a big improvement out at Latimer Lake. And then the third dam is at the south side of Latimer Lake. The old dam there was a very simple old earthen structure, and that you can see on the left and on the right, we've replaced that with a proper spillway that will direct the water to an appropriate location when there's a major storm. In the past, the water went towards our infrastructure, and now we wanted to divert it to a safer location. So that was a big improvement for the South Dam. So that's the three dams that were upgraded during the project. So these are a couple of pictures that have been kicking around the water department for a few years. So the first one on the top left is from Loch Lomond Road. There's a cast iron pipe from the mid 1800s I believe this picture is from maybe 1929, and it shows the old cast iron pipe, the big 600, being damaged by a water main break and a big washout. And the other picture is, I think, in a similar location, and you can see the car and one of the employees there. But I guess the point of this is to show that, there was commentary from St. John Water staff 90 years ago that these cast iron mains were giving them trouble and needed to be upgraded or repaired and fixed. And we've relied on these pipes for many decades, and we've just now kind of dealt with them. They're going to be the replaced pipes are going to be much more reliable now. Just for some context, that big washout in Loch Lomond Road is just past where the auto barn is now on Loch Lomond Road. So this is a picture on the left of some of the pit pipes from 1898 that were removed on the west side as we were installing some new water transmission mains. And that cast iron is very heavy duty. I have a piece of it here on my desk. It shows how heavy that old cast iron was, and that's a little coupon that we cut out of the pipe as to kind of show what that old pipe was made of. So we've either replaced that pipe or slip lined it depending on the section. So we have another picture here in a minute. We'll kind of show you the difference. So as Brent had mentioned, we replaced around 26 kilometers worth of pipe. A lot of it was big transmission mains. So the picture on the left is a blue PVC pipe that would be installed by an open cut, which is quite popular. That's what we do majority of the time when we replace water mains. And the picture on the right is the slip lining process, where you can see the black polyethylene pipe gets pulled inside the old cast iron pipe. The benefit of that is you can install a lot more pipe with less digging. And also, once, in the future, the old cast iron pipe will obviously break and disintegrate and rust, but the black pipe that's installed will live on for many decades beyond that without the benefit of the host pipe. So it's a long-lasting solution. So the East Side water system, in the past, we relied on Latimer Lake for our instantaneous storage. And of course, the screening and chlorination was right there at the lake. So Latimer Lake used to act as our storage for our water. But now with the processing time that takes at the water treatment plant, we've built those 3 large tanks. So each of those 3 large tanks at the water storage tank, they're 11 million liters each. So we have 33 million liters or 33 megaliters of treated water storage. And the purpose of that is, to have instantaneous access to large volumes of water any time of day. And that's already been treated. And also that gives a little bit of time, processing time, if there's any ever issues at the treatment plant. So that's a big step forward for the water system right there. Latimer Lake. So in order to install those 3 big pipes in Latimer Lake, they built a temporary cofferdam, which is basically hundreds of truckloads of rock and temporary sheet piling that's driven into the lake. And the next picture, you'll see what we put in there. So inside this temporary cofferdam, those are the beginning of the first the 3 intakes that just go into the first section of the lake. And then, of course, later on in the project, that temporary cofferdam was removed, the steel was removed, and all the rock was removed, and the pipes remained. But as you can see, one of the challenges of the project was construction in the wintertime. It was quite an outstanding job they did with that. And here you see a plan view. The 2 red lines are the old intakes that the city relied on for a very long time. One was built around 1905, and the other one a few decades later. And those 2 old pipes are replaced with the 3 new pipes. And the 3-foot diameter pipe is an old wooden pipe. And as far as I know, that's the last wooden pipe in the city that's been taken out of service. We wanted to get a sample of it, but we couldn't. It was too difficult to get at. But the 3 new intakes and the 3 new screens are going to serve the city well for many, many decades. And that was a very interesting and complicated project. So it's excellent that we have a much better facility there now to move forward with. So yeah, like the note says, that's the wood stave pipe that it's now abandoned. The water's no longer flowing through it. So is that the?
Thank you, Dean. Just moving on to the next slides to wrap up the presentation. The project has received some recognition on both the national and local level. It was awarded the National Silver Award for Innovation and Excellence at the Public-Private Partnerships. And also it was recognized as Project of the Year by the Atlantic Canada Water and Wastewater Association. And just a couple of months ago, the project was featured on the front cover of the Environmental Science and Engineering magazine. Moving on to the finances of the project as it relates to the financials. As you can see here, there's a surplus on the project, which we reported first to the Finance Committee. The budget for the project was just over $183 million, and the total capital cost is to come in around $182 million. So a surplus of approximately $1,008,000 or 0.55% of budget. I should note that these results are based on variance to budget for the project and are not intended to reflect the total cost over the 30-year arrangement. So overall, excellent news for the project. That a project that has lasted essentially 8 years, as you see here on the slides. Moving on now, I'd like to just give some thanks I wanted to take a moment to thank the previous council for their leadership and ability to secure the funding in the various levels of government, and also for securing an agreement with Port City Water Partners, and to our current council for their leadership, for your leadership, and your steadfast support throughout the Safe Clean Drinking Water Project, a project that essentially started construction when this council took office and now has successfully achieved final completion, as well as the key outcomes of the project that had been defined many years ago, as well as reaching these milestones essentially on time and under budget. And a big thanks goes out to the entire high-performing city team who remained committed throughout the project, despite all of its various challenges, committed to delivering a first-rate project and first-rate results for the ratepayers and citizens of St. John. And I cannot say enough good things about this highly dedicated team. And with that, also a note of thanks to the deputy mayor, to the mayor, and to the city manager, as they formed part of the steering committee that provide guidance to the project team on an ongoing, regular basis over the 4 or 5 years of the project. And it was their commitment as well to ensure that the project was a success. And with that, Your Worship, I turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Brent, to you and to Dean and the whole team. A big, big thank you. But I have to say that I remember way back, I think it was around 2013 or when Rodney Weston was the MP and David Alward was the premier and Mel Norton was the mayor. And that's when the three levels of government came together and committed the money to the city of St. John to do this project, or we wouldn't have been here today. I mean, I'm sure other people would have done it too, but they happened to be the three politicians that got together and made a start on this Safe Clean Drinking Water Project. And it's the most expensive project in the history of the city or the history of the province. So together they started it, and everybody else on work continued on, and the project's done. And, you know, over the years, people often talked about having safe, clean drinking water, and now St. John has it, the same as many years ago. They talked about cleaning up the harbor, and we've completed that project. So St. John really has come a long ways on that. So to you, Brent, as a commissioner that steered the whole thing, we really appreciate what you've done, and to the city manager. So now I can see everybody. I think Councillor Armstrong wanted to say something.
Thank you, Deputy. I hope the general public and the citizens of St. John realize that about a year ago, because of the management team and all this team working together, this was a $208 million project. They settled everything for $1.8 million, got the construction done. This is unheard of on a project of this size. And then they bring us news that we're under budget. Now, people can't build a house on budget. Nobody's fault. They can't build a house on budget. They generate 5 to 10% over cost. We are now on a $208 million project, $1 million under. I can't stress enough that the management of this project is unbelievable and deserve every award they get. This is unheard of in this industry, folks. And the citizens of St. John should be very proud of our city staff that have done this with the leadership of Mr. McGovern, of saving us money, coming in under budget on an 8-year project. And the council before us deserves all the credit too for taking this and going forward. So, I mean, I know people forget, but last year, like I said, that was a huge settlement, a huge deal. When Little St. John, New Brunswick took on the $1 billion corporation and won. It wasn't a fight, but the team had their I's dotted and their T's crossed. So there was zero wiggle room. And that's how our management team performed. You can't say enough. In this industry today, I bet you couldn't find anywhere with this magnitude that people come under budget, on time, under budget. Unbelievable. That's my comments. And again, Brent McGovern and all the staff, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I do need a motion to receive file. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Casey. So certainly we appreciate your presentation, and again, on behalf of all of us, you've done us proud. We have safe, clean drinking water, and it's a big improvement for the city, and I know that everybody recognizes that, and we appreciate everyone that was part of this team. So thank you very much. So on the question to receive file, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next item, Common Clerk.
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Next item, oh, my video is not working, but anyway, next item is 12.7. It's Municipal Legislative Authority respecting racial discrimination, and the city solicitor will introduce this item.
Hey, John Nugent, our city solicitor. Might be your final report for your career with us, John.
It will be indeed. Good evening, Deputy and members of council. First, let me thank you, Deputy, for your generous comments at the outset. And I'd like to thank council for the certificate that I look forward to receiving.
Well, where are you, John, so I can get you make sure you have it after the council meeting.
I occupy with one other person, I think, the 10,000 square feet of the 8th floor, which is obviously largely empty. In any event, to get to the item at hand, and I'll begin with the conclusion. This is a bit of correspondence that arose out of a resolution that was adopted earlier this summer. And it was a resolution with several parts, but the part that is particularly relevant for this correspondence read, and I will quote, it was a request for advice with respect to a detailing of all available options within the sole authority of the City of St. John to impose all available penalties against any person who racially discriminates. And I said, I'll begin with my conclusion, then I'll speak briefly about the analysis that led to that conclusion. The conclusion I've reached is that the local government of the province of New Brunswick does not have the authority to enact municipal bylaws that would address racial discrimination or to impose penalties that would be based upon such activity. And the rationale, the analysis that gives rise to that conclusion is one that's based upon a consideration of the nature of a local government's authority and the interpretive process that's required to identify that authority. We'll begin with the proposition that local governments, not only in this province, but throughout the country, they have no constitutional existence. They exist solely will of a provincial legislature. So any authority that a municipality has is to be found in some piece of legislation enacted by a province that confers that authority. We're all familiar with the piece of legislation that are the most common sources of authority to enact bylaws for municipalities. We have, for example, the Local Governance Act, the Community Planning Act, the Motor Vehicle Act, and there are a number of other acts that provide more focused and limited delegated authority. But that's a sample of where we look to determine what authority we have. And the Local Governance Act is currently the piece of legislation that most broadly identifies the authority which has been delegated by the provincial legislature to local governments. And if we look at some of that language in the Local Governance Act, on its face, it is remarkably broad. In fact, it's so broad that if you only looked at that language, you would be hard-pressed to identify any activity that was beyond the scope of a local government's bylaw-making power. However, the Supreme Court has made it very clear that in understanding legislation, which is essentially an exercise in discerning the intention of the legislature, you must consider the language within a context. And part of that context in the circumstance at hand is other legislation which has been adopted by the province. And in particular, it's the Human Rights Act. The Human Rights Act, as everybody recognizes, I'm sure, is a rather comprehensive bit of legislation that achieves a number of things. It identifies an expansive list of what is described in that legislation as prohibited grounds of discrimination. And that list, expansive as it is, has as the first item listed racial discrimination. So racial discrimination or activity that gives rise to discrimination based upon race is the very first prohibited ground of discrimination in the Human Rights Act. That act provides a complete scheme for complaints to be registered respecting alleged discrimination on a whole range of grounds, whether they're employment related, related to services and facilities available to the public, with respect to property, with respect to accommodations, signage. It's a very expansive and comprehensive treatment. And it also provides a scheme to mediate, to investigate, and to eventually rule upon allegations of discrimination, including discrimination based upon race. And eventually, that determination will be made by the Human Rights Commission, which operates under the Human Rights Act. The result is, in my view, that it is not possible to interpret the broad language of the Local Governance Act in such a fashion as to effectively oust or what would be the word, emasculate the role and function of the Human Rights Act and that of the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission also provides, or the Human Rights Act rather, also provides that if a person breaches the prohibitions that are found in that legislation, that constitutes an offense. It's an offense that's punishable by prosecution, and the fine that can be imposed in that case ranges between $240 and $10,200. It also provides that in stipulated circumstances, breaches can result in imprisonment. So it is a holistic, province-wide legislative regime that addresses, amongst other things, discrimination based upon race. And without going into any greater detail than that, that forms the basis for the conclusion, in my view, that the notion of a bylaw designed to prohibit or address in any fashion discrimination based upon race is simply beyond the reach of local governments in this province. Now, the whole matter of promoting human rights generally, including racial equality, is obviously of significant concern to every local government, including ours. And they are means by which that can be promoted and respected by a municipality. And it's essentially the behavior of the municipality. That's the best evidence of the promotion and respect for any human right. And that will consist of our behavior, including the policies that we promulgate and the administration that we support of those policies. Now, I understand the city manager wishes to speak to that latter dimension, and I'll pass it over to him. But in the meantime, if there are any questions arising from the material presented, I would do my best to respond to them.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for that information. City Manager, did you wish to add anything to that?
Your Worship, I'm just going to add one point and then hand it back to Council for questions to our City Solicitor. The legal opinion is that we cannot enact legislation and or fines, but it does not mean that we are powerless to help address racial discrimination and barriers and challenges that exist. And I just want to highlight one initiative that we are undertaking within the city, and it's to re-examine as we develop new policies or revisit policies we already have. We have to look at the policies through the lens of potential racial discrimination and potential barriers and make sure that we are minimizing those to address systemic challenges. The one example I'll give you to make my point is we hire a fair number of people within the city because people retire, people move on. In some of our job descriptions, in some of our requirements, are we putting in the requirements items that will be viewed as barriers to certain racial classes, newcomers, or anything else? For example, years of experience, educational requirements. If so, we need to be able to justify those. Otherwise, we are putting in barriers that do not help with this very real challenge that society faces at this point in time. So we are not powerless. We will undertake ideas and notions, but most importantly, we will be reviewing our policies as we continue to refine and develop them to make sure that we are not putting in systemic barriers and challenges as we move forward. Then, of course, there's all the other dimensions in terms of leadership in the community, et cetera, that can be exercised by council and others. But that's a discussion, of course, for another day. With that comment, I'd like to hand it back to council and any questions they have of the city solicitor or myself.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Thank you, John Nugent, for the report. Is there any questions from council? Councillor Hickey, did you have your hand up? No. You were doing something.
I didn't, Deputy, but I did. I would offer just a couple comments. Certainly, thank you, John. Thank you for doing the research here and offering your insight. Certainly a challenging position for us, and I think one that we did expect. But the more we can continue to use this as a lens, as the city manager mentioned, to continue to put forward efforts to be more inclusive, to be more insightful on diversity and how we can do a better job of supporting it and encouraging it and building it within City Hall and as well within, when I think of my ability as a counselor to take action, I reflect on the nominating committee and how the nominating committee can instill policies within our nomination process to ensure that we are meeting certain levels of whether it's gender balance or racial balance, whatever that looks like, ensuring that those exist, as many municipalities have taken steps to do. So there's powers within all of us as both individual councillors, but also as a council as a whole to continue to take these steps. And I hope that we continue to use it as a lens moving forward in the decisions that we make.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody else. I do need a motion to receive file. Moved by Councillor Hickey, seconded by Councillor Casey. And I would say that in the past, the City Hall has always tried to make sure that all our citizens feel included, and we've done community events and whatever else we can do in this community to make sure that we're very inclusive for all of our citizens, and we'll continue to do that, which is very important. So on that question, and again, thank you for your reports on that question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk, next item, please.
Deputy Mayor, item 12.8 is a staff report, correspondence and staff actions. Uptown St. John letter. There is an attached letter from Uptown St. John to the staff report.
Ms. Hamilton, as Commissioner Groth, did you wish to comment on this?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, members of council, before you are recommended actions to respond to the correspondence you've received from the Uptown St. John Business Improvement Association, which requests removal of the 15-minute curbside parking spaces in Uptown, which were implemented as part of the city's economic recovery efforts. Staff have engaged with Uptown St. John in formulating our recommendations, and Mr. David Dobbelstein, our Manager of Growth, is available to provide a brief overview of the recommendations before you this evening.
Hey, Mr. Dobbelstein. Mr. Dobbelstein.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of Council. As the Commissioner mentioned, we have a recommendation to make some tweaks to the 15-minute parking pilot program. As you can see in the report, we rolled this out at the direction of Council, and the signs were installed about approximately a month ago. What we started hearing from the business community within that short period of time between then and now was there was a bit of confusion between whether the signs were paid spaces or free spaces. There was also some confusion about where the spaces were delineated. It's still a work in progress in updating them. And it should be noted that each sign has, or each space rather, has one sign at the front and one at the back of each space. And it's still missing some arrows to delineate which space is actually the 50-minute spot. And what we're observing is that it's given the impression that perhaps there's 3 times as many spots as the public might think. So we received this feedback from Uptown St. John because they've been getting similar comments as well. And so the recommendation from staff is that based on some of the pressure that we've been observing on Canterbury Street due to the infill project there, as well as the new loading zone that was installed on Germain Street after these installation of these spaces, that we'd recommend revoking those spaces and switching them back to 2-hour parking spaces. However, the impetus of this program was in 2 parts. It was to create quicker turnover for our Uptown core and to drive more business to our local business district in the Central Peninsula. But it was also designed at the time when COVID first started and businesses weren't allowed to remain open to the public. And for this reason, because we don't know whether a second wave will hit St. John in particular, or whether it will have changes to the mandatory order, you all know how challenging it can be to change bylaws quickly. So we are recommending that because we don't have enough information on the remaining opinions of businesses for the other spaces, as well as because we don't know whether or not these would be needed for quick turnover and pickup and drop off, we are recommending that the remaining 8 be left in place. But we are also suggesting that we explore other options to more quickly define which spaces could be used for programs such as these. And then finally, our recommendation is that you direct staff to continue with the public engagement with our economic development partners, both on this pilot program and future upcoming economic and community recovery initiatives. And I'll leave it for any questions that you may have.
Mr. Dobbelstein, so the 2 that you're changing back to the original 2-hour parking is one is on Germain Street?
Correct. They're outlined in the sign on page 4 of your report, and you can see them highlighted in red.
Okay, so just so the public knows, where's the other one that you're changing back?
So the 2 spaces, one is on Canterbury, and it's right in front of Canterbury Dental Clinic. And then the other one is on Germain Street, obviously just next to Italian by Night, or a little further up.
And they're being
the street from them.
Converted back to what they...
We're suggesting they be returned to 2-hour parking for the...
And the other sites you want to be able to continue to work on, and you'll have a report at a later date to council?
That is correct.
Okay. Fine. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by... Is there someone seconded by Councillor Casey? Just speak on the motion, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Deputy. The feedback that I'm getting is that it was a interesting concept and a nice try, but it really didn't, increase business per se, and it was confusing. And there was people that says 15 minutes, but how do you police that? You would have to have people there a lot more often. Is it really worth the effort? Is the business case really there to have them? Or can you leave the bylaw in place and just do away with them for now and do an analysis, and if it's worthy of putting it back in place at a later date?
Did you want to comment on that, Mr. Dobbelstein?
The city manager's keen to speak, I think, first.
Let me jump in. The short answer to Councillor McKenzie is we don't know. We've gotten very clear feedback on the one on Canterbury and the one on Germain. The feedback on the others, if I was to use an expression, the jury's still out. And certainly what I wish to avoid is taking signs down and putting them back up and taking them back down, etc. So for now, we're recommending that we remove 2 and that we continue with the public consultation and the examination of the other 8 and consult all businesses, because certainly some businesses who aren't into pickup and drop off, the signs, the 15-minute parking spots do nothing for them. For others, perhaps it does do something for them. But it comes down to, in an attempt to not overreact, but certainly to be listening to the business community, we think we need to do a little bit more analysis before we come to you on the 8 remaining spots. No matter what we decide, this requires a bylaw change. So what you're voting on tonight is support in principle, and then we got to come back to you with the bylaw changes to enable this. So we still have some time. And in fact, as part of the bylaw changes, I've tasked the staff to try to find a way whereby every time we want to change something like this, it doesn't need to be a bylaw change. We got to be a bit more nimble than that. So we're going to work on that as well. But at the end of the day, I think we as staff still need to do a little bit more understanding so that we don't react just to anecdotal information or just information from a select part of the business community, which is important, but we got to capture it all.
Is there more than one? It's my understanding that there's 2 on Germain Street. Is that the case? And we're only doing away with one of the 2?
That is correct. So our recommendation is to do away with 1 for the time being, and that is to allow for the other businesses on Germain that still rely on pickup and drop off as a business model to have access to the pilot. We want to see if that would alleviate some of the concern. One of the observations that our staff made even as recently as this weekend is when we started going back to some of the businesses who signed the letter just to inquire on the rationale. And we found that when we explained the purpose of the program, some of them have told us like, oh, well, I may not have signed it had I known that in advance. So we still think there's an opportunity for further consultation and to further test the pilot program itself.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey?
So,
Miss Councillor McKenzie, you're not finished.
No, I just wanted to clarify something, because I see in the package we have the signatures here. It said, by way of the signature, I'm requesting council have all 15-minute parking spaces reversed back to 2-hour parking. And there's no support for that second one on Germain Street either. So how come we're not taking both the ones off Germain and just dealing with the other ones that are not in that area?
Sure. Through your worship to the councillor, the rationale for that is what you saw in the letter is the management of 19 different businesses in 3 streets who've replied. So Uptown St. John has over 500 members, and what you see before you is feedback from 19 of them. And what we weren't able to confirm was which businesses were still supportive. And we did know, Uptown St. John told us anecdotally they had a few businesses, each told them they didn't want to sign the petition. So we don't have enough information to make a broad-based decision on whether we would remove all parking in all areas of the city. And so some of the feedback we were hearing is there was a sense on the part of Germain Street on the western side with the addition of the new loading zone that it was given a perception that there wasn't enough parking. So our recommendation first is to see if by removing that space, that removes the overall concern. It should be noted that there's still over 5,800 other places to park in our Uptown District. We're only talking about a small amount of spaces.
So you may be back to council doing away with more spots in the future. Is that what you're saying?
That's a possibility, yes. We'll be consulting with our business community this fall and obviously be responding to their feedback.
Okay.
They'll bring another report back. Councillor Hickey, did you?
I do, Deputy, if I can. Thank you.
Go ahead.
David, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate you putting this together. I understand the hard work that's gone into this on behalf of the whole team, and certainly appreciate that. One question, just somewhat off topic, just related to the loading zone on Germain Street. I know there was a couple issues brought up by businesses in that immediate area based on the actual placement of the sign. Do you know if that was ever resolved?
I would defer that question either to the city manager or Commissioner Huguenot.
To Councillor Hickey, yes. We've had discussions with the owners that expressed the concern. We understand their concerns. We're taking the corrective actions. All is fine in that regard. It's not a question of whether there should be a loading zone. It's not even a question of the placement of the loading zone. It's simply how we properly demarcate that loading zone.
No, I know it was.
And we've taken the feedback and we are taking the corrective actions, yes.
No, I know it was strictly or exclusive to the actual placement of the physical signs. So no, I appreciate that, and thanks for the response. I guess my challenge with this is, as we've gone down this route of our recovery efforts in the Uptown and on the Central Peninsula, we seem to keep coming to the same conclusion every time. We hit these roadblocks, which are, numerous businesses coming out and saying that they're either not supportive of open streets, or there's been confusion on open streets, or they're not, or in this case, they're not supportive of 15-minute parking. And I guess my challenge is, and what I reflect back on is, are we putting the cart before the horse on this? Because my hope is that we can turn to, in cases like this, turn to our Chamber of Commerce, turn to our Business Improvement Association in Uptown St. John, and respond to them and saying, we trust that, there's 500 businesses that are 500 individuals that are involved in our BIA. And in doing that, we understand that they are representing the best interests of those businesses, regardless of what level of signature is on that. So I would turn around as a city councilor and as a city councilor for the area and say, well, I have faith in the direction of our BIA and the direction of whatever organization it be that represents that group of businesses, and say that they have a pulse and an understanding of what's happening in those businesses and in the community. And in doing so, I don't think that we would then in turn to need to go and for the however many time go and talk to all the businesses in the area, because it seems like we've consistently spoken to the businesses and we haven't necessarily gotten it right every time. So I guess my question is, would it not be more prudent for us to turn around at this point to whether it's the Business Improvement Association, to the Chamber of Commerce, to those organizations that exist in the neighborhood and in the community for the purpose of supporting business and for the purpose, in this case, of supporting our economic recovery, and say, what should we do? How can we enable you and how can we support you? Because it seems like every time we go back to all the businesses, we're not getting the answers we need. We're not coming up with the solutions that are supporting the community fully.
I guess I would agree with some of that. I just feel that, and we had this happen before on another issue there not very long ago, but the people that have a business in a certain area know what's best for them. City Hall doesn't know what's best for them because they want to run their business. We wanted to help people recover from the situation where they were losing business because of COVID-19. But I think in some cases, we wanted to help, but we didn't do we probably should have backed off. Even some of our open streets, we've had, complaints from businesses because they don't feel it was beneficial for them. Just because it was our idea doesn't mean that we have to just keep strong-arming in them, because they know what's best for their business and they want to do what's best for them. We're there to help them, but we should never put our thoughts or our ideas and say we have to enforce them because they're our ideas. We want our businesses, regardless of where they're situated, whether they're in the Uptown or any place in the city, to be able to do what's best for them. So I kind of feel that we shouldn't keep going back and saying, well, we got to get more input here from businesses. If businesses do not want us to have 15-minute parking, let it be. We should do what they want us to do, not what we just want to do. I mean,
Deputy Mayor, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt because you are now mischaracterizing what we are doing in the extreme.
No,
we are not strong-arming anybody. We are seeking input from all the various groups who work and live in Uptown. The business community is one, but there's large business and there's small business. There's commerce during the day and there's commerce during the night. There's also residents. There's also public safety considerations in terms of how much of a gapway you need to conduct emergency response, etc. We as city staff have an obligation to explore all of that. And I have tremendous respect for Uptown St. John and what they do. But their input on this last one was based, and they freely admit it, on 19 businesses. There is much more than that to consider in Uptown St. John. So what we are suggesting this evening is a phased approach. We know there's two for sure that there's no support for. Fine, we'll remove them, no problem. Everything we've done from a recovery effort, first of all, almost none of it was our idea. And secondly, we said with all of it that it's a trial. We're not trying to force anything on anybody. We are trialing things to see what works. In the case of 15-minute parking, as staff, I can tell you that we do not yet believe we have all the input necessary to come to you and say it's completely a bad idea and stop it in its entirety. We are ready to come to you this evening and say 2 of them for sure are misplaced and we'd like to move those. That's what we're saying this evening. But please, I'm sorry, but I need to take exception to the notion that we are trying to impose things. It is quite the opposite. We are trying to get as much input as possible before coming to council with any recommendations.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I also understand what citizens are saying too and what the businesses feel. So I think that, you know, we have to work this together, but we can't always just, you know, keep delaying it because they have the needs and they're in private business and they have to make a go of it and they know what's best on their street because they've been situated there for a number of years. I don't have a problem with us going back and looking at the 8 other sites, but if we find out that they're not beneficial to the businesses, that we have to do something about it. We have to change our ideas on it. That's what I'm asking.
Deputy Mayor, absolutely. If we find out that the other signs are not supported by business, they are coming down. There is no doubt about that at all. We've never said otherwise. This is all trial, and then once we trial it, we get input, and we come back to council with recommendations. Absolutely. If there's no support, it's going to stop. We have to do an entire after-action review of the open streets. Was open streets worth the effort? We need the feedback from the community to determine that, and we'll get that, and then we'll come back to council with recommendations. There is not a member of the staff that I know of that is being stubborn-headed here. In fact, the opposite. If anything, we are making sure that we consult with as many people as humanly possible, and there's not any singular entity that represents all of the various stakeholders on these issues. Uptown St. John does not represent everybody, the chamber does not represent anybody, and various community groups do not represent everybody. We have to consult them all.
No, but anyway, I hope that this report will be coming to us soon. Councillor Sullivan.
Just Deputy, I just didn't, I was hoping to hear from...
Okay, Councillor Sullivan, please, and then you, Councillor. You had one turn. I have to speak, allow Councillor Sullivan to speak.
Thank you, Deputy. First of all, I want to try to keep this issue in context. Something I've really been pleased with this summer is how entrepreneurial the city has gotten. I mean, the corporate city, our staff, in trying a bunch of things. I think if this was a little while ago, and certainly in government, we would have analyzed everything. COVID vaccinations would have been done, and we still would have been thinking about implementing a pop-up park. But everything, we tried a bunch of stuff. Staff have used the word pilot in a lot of things, and a lot of things have worked. Uptown St. John's letter talks about the beer garden, the pop-up park, local artists. Most of the feedback I have heard on open streets has been positive. On this one, if you're going to be entrepreneurial and try stuff, every once in a while you miss. And I think on this one, the feedback has been, and certainly on those 2 spots, we're sure that was a miss. So the first recommendation is to remove those 2 right away. The second recommendation, I think, is to help us continue to be, the city manager used the word nimble, entrepreneurial, give staff some authority to say, look, if it's working great, we can put it in without having to go through 3 readings in a month. Or if it's not working, give them authority so they don't have to come back and we have 3 readings and it takes another month in order to respond. What I would like, and I think staff is already headed that way, and my sense is, they haven't said it, and David didn't say it, but my sense is they plan on getting as much feedback as fast as possible. This is the start. Uptown St. John's says in their letter, we would like to, as much as a removal, they talk about re-examining the whole idea, and I think that's where staff is right now. So we're taking, if the recommendation passes, we take the 2 out. Staff are going to go back and gather as much data as possible. And I guess my question would be, is there a timeline, David or city manager, for getting that information back? I would hope we continue to be nimble and quick, and that you've got a goal of getting that information back to us by, I'll let you fill in the blank.
Well, maybe I'm not 2 meetings for now or a month. Mr. David Dobelstein, how long do you think it'll take to get that information?
Through your worship to the councillor, we have a work plan this fall to address different types of engagements. What we've learned from the business community as well is, as much as we want to do it quickly, it is very challenging because so many of them use different mediums to communicate, and we have to adapt to their schedule. So I don't want to promise you that we will be back in a month. We are hoping that we'll have the engagement done sometime in November, completely for all the economic recovery projects, including the 15-minute parking. That will give us enough time to further analyze and do a sensitivity analysis, as well as to go meet individually businesses and to continue the consultation that we've been doing all along with Uptown St. John, with the Chamber and other economic development partners.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hickey, you had another comment?
I do. I just wanted to follow up on my previous comment because I was hoping to just get an answer from it. I guess my question was, I'll be in support of these changes to 15-minute parking because I think the community consensus is quite clear on this. But the challenge that I have is our holistic approach to this, and I hope that this gets brought up in the review, David, and I hope that can be reflected in it, because the understanding and what I have been consistently told by businesses in the Uptown, that we put the cart before the horse on this one, and what we should have done is leaned harder on and championed, allowed our community organizations to be the champions for this one, to understand and to do their jobs in bringing forward the issues that are impacting their businesses in order to support new initiatives. I fully support us becoming more nimble, adopting new programs around pedestrianizing streets and pocket parks and everything like that. I'm excited about those projects, but I think what needs to happen, and what has become clear within the consensus in the community, I would take as, because every single store that I've been, every shop owner I've spoken to, the numerous tweets I've gotten, the numerous conversations I've had, whether it is with the BIA, with any of the organizations that are represented there, is that what we should have done is allowed those community groups to champion this stuff, and then council turn around and say, how can we support you, and rely on their feedback for that. So I guess I hope we shift the process a little bit, just to be a bit more reflective of what the community's concerns are and the obvious need. I mean, regardless of whether or not it's a few folks or it's all of them, there is some clear issues that have been not only driven from 15-minute parking, but driven throughout this process that I just hope get characterized, and I hope are represented in the reports to come.
Okay, the motion's on the floor that we have 2 of the sites converted back to the regular 2-hour parking. The other 8 sites will be studied in greater detail by our staff, and the report will come back to us. And due course. So on that motion, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Common Clerk, please.
Deputy Mayor, we're down to the final items, which were sent forward from Committee of the Whole. And so the first one is 17.1, and this is a recommendation with respect to engineering services, site works, funding key.
So the motion,
recommendation, if you'd like.
Yeah, the recommendation is to appoint our new chief engineer. Could you read?
Yeah, no, this one is actually to that the city reject all proposals.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the funding.
Yeah, for engineering services, site works, funding key, in the event the city does not receive formal written approval of its application for funding on or before the 30th day of September 2020, said application being dated the 27th day of June 2019 and submitted under the Integrated Bilateral Agreement for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program.
So I need a mover for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Casey. On the question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next item, please.
Deputy Mayor, next item 17.2, recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to Chief City Engineer, and the resolution is that Council appoint Michael Baker to assume position and attendant responsibilities of Chief City Engineer, in addition to his newly appointed responsibilities as Director of Engineering, effective October 1, 2020.
Someone to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Hickey. On the question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next item.
The final item is recommended appointments to committees. There are a few different committees, but the first one would be Canada Games Foundation to reappoint Claire Northcott for 3 years. Heritage Development Board to reappoint Jamie Watson for 3 years, and to appoint Michael Cummings, Jason Haggerty, and Alana Lawson for 3-year terms. LBR to appoint Jeff Bauer for a 3-year term. PAC to appoint Neil Clemens for a 3-year term. St. John Free Public Library to reappoint Ben Whitney for a 3-year term. And Jean Zhu for a 3-year term. And finally, Strategic Planning Committee to amend the composition of the board from 6 to 7 members and appoint Morgan Lanigan, Carrie Tennis, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name. I know Councillor Hickey does though. And Nicole Fair until the end of the project, and to appoint Don Darling, David Merrithew, Blake Armstrong, and Donna Reardon to the end of their current term on council.
Okay, do I have a mover for that motion? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Deputy. If I could just briefly, on behalf of the nominating committee, I know the mayor couldn't be here this evening to share this perspective, but I think it is one that is held within the nominating committee. I just want to speak briefly to the strategic planning steering committee and just highlight how much of an effort went into putting this team together, and how much of an effort went into ensuring that all of the right qualifications and qualities were represented at the table in order to ensure success in our strategic planning. So certainly we gathered a huge amount of names, and lots of applicants came in, and staff did work tirelessly, led by Ian Fogan, to come up with a really solid strategy moving forward, and I essentially identifying the skills matrices of what needed to be filled within the positions. It was not an easy process for the nominating committee. We had tremendous talent that put in their names for this committee, and I want to thank, on behalf of the nominating committee, and hopefully here shortly on behalf of council, thank everyone for putting their names into this process, because it is certainly one that shows the level of commitment from the community to long-term planning, and to the vision that we all share for the city, which I think is really, really important. Certainly the one change that you'll see here is an amendment to include an extra councillor on the board, which we felt was a positive step. And certainly in choosing to appoint our members of the public, very excited to announce the appointment of Morgan Lanigan, Carrie Tanasichuk, and Nicole Fair. Met with our council team, which will be represented by Mayor Don Darling, representing the chair of the Growth Committee, Councillor David Merrithew as the chair of the Finance Committee, and as well as Councillors Blake Armstrong and Donna Reardon. Certainly very excited because I think this stands to act as the legacy of this council. As we look to shifting our frame of mind and shifting our reference point to long-term planning, visioning what the city will look like. And I hope this steering committee acts as the ability to do so. And I'm confident, and certainly confident in the team that we've selected to do so. So I'll turn it over to council now, and hope to gain your support on certainly the full list that's presented before you. But in particular, I wanted to focus today on the bigger one, which is the creation of this strategic planning steering committee. So thank you very much, Deputy.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey, and thank you for all the work the nominating committee did, and look forward to the reports from the committee in the future. So on that recommendation, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. So I believe, Common Clerk, that's the end of our meeting, the end of all of the items. So thank you very much. Hope everyone enjoyed the meeting, and we'll be back in 2 weeks in 1 day, and hopefully we'll be in person that night in the new renovated council chamber. So thank you all, and could I have a motion for adjournment? So moved by Councillor Sullivan and Councillor McKenzie. I seconded. So on that question, I know everybody agrees. So anyway, good night, and have a pleasant Thanksgiving weekend coming up in another week's time. So good night.